The Treasures of Cau Ferrat. Collecting is an illness that has no cure, and we collectors are the scavengers of memories. Santiago Rusiñol is an artist who is essential to understanding Catalan modernism. An indefatigable traveller, Rusiñol left us this magnificent museum, the Cau Ferrat, the ideal place that he built to harbour his unique collection. Iron. Each of the pieces comprising this museum correspond to a passage in the artist's biography. As a whole, they show us one of the most authentic and spectacular artists' houses that keeps the spirit of modernism intact today. The relationship between Rusiñol and wrought iron art was intense. He was born in 1861, when the industrial production system was quickly taking over and the iron artisans were vanishing. The art of iron was in danger of extinction. Rusiñol began to collect old, abandoned or unused pieces made of wrought iron. He looked for them everywhere and brought them to the studio that he shared with the sculptor Enric Clarasó. They named the studio Cau Ferrat, Cau or barrow because it was a refuge of artists, and Ferrat from the word ferro or iron in honour of its prized wrought iron objects. Sitges. In 1893, he transported the 750 ironworks in his collection to Sitges, to a little house in the old quarter next to the St. John Hospital. The Sitges town hall gave him the windows and lintels from the former Gothic castle, which they had turned into the new town hall. Rusiñol also brought to his house studio in Sitges the old Gothic-style baptismal font from the Vignette Sanctuary. His sculpture of El Forjador, the blacksmith, which sits in the middle of the main hall, is a reminder of the collection and the period he shared with Enric Clarasó. The grand opening of Cau Ferrat in November 1894 was a real occasion because it was the day that the two paintings by El Greco, The Tears of St. Peter and Mary Magdalene and Penitence, which he had purchased in Paris for 1,000 francs, were transported in a civic procession through the streets of Sitges on horseback and under a litter. Travels. In the spring of 1894, he and the painter Zuloaga left for Italy, which, as Santiago Rusiñol said, was the country of the sun and the long macaroni, birthplace of Dante and Garibaldi, of Horace and Mazzini. He and Zuloaga worked as copyists in the Uffizi Gallery with the early and Renaissance painters, including Botticelli, and they took the copies back with them to the Cau Ferrat walls. Family. The death of his grandfather in 1887 had freed him from his debts from the yarn factory they owned in Manlleu. He allowed his brother to inherit. Albert happily took over the business, and he embarked upon the life of an artist. Granada, Olot, Poblet, and a carriage ride around old Catalonia. Carriage with 8 mules. This all lasted until September 1889, when he went to the notary's office to issue papers in favour of his wife, Lluïsa Denise, the mother of his only child, Maria, and he took off for Paris. Paris. He lived his early Bohemian days on Rue de l'Orient, a dark Bohemia, as he said, peppered with bursts of light. The light were his stays in Sitges, which started in the autumn of 1891. The other place of his bohemian life was the Moulin de la Galette, where he shared an apartment with Casas and Utrillo, and from which he wrote the chronicles Desde el Molino, From the Windmill, illustrated by Ramon Casas. They both painted the Moulin de la Galette in different landscapes and scenes. Casas portrayed its interior, that sad, melancholy evening dance that has travelled around the world. Another friend lived there too, the engraver Ramon Canudas, who fell ill, so in the spring of 1892, Rusiñol took him to Sitges, where he died. He was buried in the town's white cemetery, accompanied by the wrought iron cross from Alsace, which they had in the courtyard of his first house in Paris. Andalusia has a strong presence in the Cau Ferrat, especially because of 2 of the 5 sojourns that the artist took there. In Granada, the gardens of the Alhambra and the Generalife turned into a symbolist vision, and at the solitary Vizna Palace, he discovered the poetry of an abandoned garden. Modernism. His artistic activism in favour of total art, his symbolist poetics, and his embracing of modernity, which he glimpsed in El Greco as a regenerationist paradigm for the way of art, earned him recognition as the leader of modernism in Catalonia and Spain, and the Cau Ferrat House Studio became a temple of modernism. Els Quatre Gats. In 1897, Rusiñol took part in the opening exhibition of the beer hall Els Quatre Gats in Barcelona, which was created to imitate the Parisian cabarets Chat Noir and Quatre Gats. Rusiñol was admired by a young apprentice artist, Picasso, from whom he purchased a few works. He also met the emerging young artists Manolo Augué, Isidre Nonet, and Carlos Casagemas at Els Quatre Gats, and their works that he purchased came to be part of the Cau Ferrat collection. Milieu. In Rusiñol's lifetime, the list of visitors to Cau Ferrat was extensive and extraordinarily varied. Writers, artists, actors, musicians, collectors, politicians, hikers, choirs, and more. They included Joan Maragall, Àngel Guimerà, Emilia Pardo Bazán, Víctor Balaguer, Àngel Ganivet, Enric Morera, Zuluaga, Pau Casals, Carlos Gardel, Federico García Lorca, and Picasso. Everyone who was someone or wanted to be someone had been to Cau Ferrat. The first modernist festival in 1892 was a tribute to that group of artists of the Luminist School of Sitges. In 1894, during the third modernist festival, when the Cau Ferrat was inaugurated, Rusiñol delivered a speech in which he definitively linked together for posterity modernism, Sitges, and the Cau Ferrat.